Hey everyone, Nick Espinoza, your chief security fanatic here, and it is Sunday, so we are doing breaches of the week. And as always, before I dive into those breaches, I'd like to thank the following people that sent me messages, linked me, tagged me, whatever it was to get me these. It is always appreciated, and that is Chris Fellon, Reynaldo Abreu, Jason Dance, and Jacqueline Wolf. Guys, thank you very much. It is always appreciated. And with that, let's start with Blackbaud. As you know, they've been in my Breaches of the Week segment for the last few weeks or so, and it continues to basically get worse. Now, basically what happened with them, if you recall, is they got hit, they got ransomed, they paid the ransom attacker to delete the data, which is never obviously foolproof and all of that, but by virtue of that, tons of charities and educational institutions that use their software to track things like benefactor payments and all that kind of stuff got hit. And so there are too many to name for this week, but some of the more interesting highlights from this week of these breaches are the John Ball Zoo in Grand Rapids, Michigan, the Bletchley Park Trust out of the United Kingdom, Bishop McGuinness Catholic High School in Oklahoma City, the Latin School in Chicago, Emporia State University in Kansas, and George Washington University, plus a lot more. So there you go. That is your Blackbaud update. And with that, let's keep on rolling and go to Coastal Preparatory Academy in North Carolina. Now, a former employee apparently obtained extremely sensitive personal information about parents and students, including things like social security numbers, health and financial information, and employment records. The charter school has filed several civil actions against this individual to recover passwords, personal data, and also control of its computer systems. Looks like a disgruntled employee might have done a lot more damage than simply stealing stuff. Looks like they might have gotten locked out. The school has also contacted the Attorney General's office of the state, and it believes that the employee responsible for this data has broken state and federal law. It seems like they have, but obviously we will see where the legal proceedings of that go. But heads up, Coastal Prep Academy, parents and students and probably faculty. Moving on, let's talk about FHN in Freeport, Illinois, which is actually not too far from here. Basically, they have a healthcare system called FHN, and suspicious activity was spotted within the compromised email, basically a compromised email account or accounts. Now, the investigation into the incident occurred on April 30th and determined that an unauthorized person accessed email accounts between February 12th and February 13th of this year. So they are looking at possibly patients' names, dates of birth, medical record or patient account numbers, health insurance information, and limited treatment and or clinical information such as provider names, diagnosis, and medication information, all of that. So heads up to you if you use FHN Healthcare out of Freeport, Illinois. Moving on from that, we're going to be talking about Boyce Technologies. They are an FDA-approved coronavirus ventilator manufacturer, so they are obviously considered very critical here during the pandemic. They apparently had a ransomware attack launched by the Doppelpayer gang, who is now threatening to leak data from the company. The Doppelpayer gang put up proof of basically hack by putting files out on one of their websites and are obviously threatening to release more if Boyce Technologies doesn't pay. So apparently there are no honor among thieves here because this could potentially get somebody killed. That is awful. Unfortunately, moving on, we're going to be talking about the city of Lafayette in Colorado. Apparently on July 27th, they had a ransomware attack on the city's computer systems, and they had disruptions to phone service, email, online payment, and reservation systems. Financial data does appear to be recoverable from unaffected backups, and they are also saying that personal credit card information of employees and citizens was not compromised. So heads up to you, citizens and employees of the city of Lafayette in Colorado. Moving on, we're going to be talking about a company called InMotion now. This is a creative project management software maker, and basically a security research team from VPN Mentor basically uncovered an unsecured Amazon AWS S3 bucket with 5.5 million files, more than 443 gigabytes in size, and they were able to trace it back to InMotion now. Now, the companies, by virtue of this, that were exposed, and this is crazy. The first one is cybersecurity firm ISC2.org, which is well known, in my industry, and they had basically multiple sets of data included in this breach as well. Other companies include insurance company Brotherhood Mutual, Universities such as Kent State in Ohio and Purdue in Indiana, Potawatomi Hotel and Casino, a consumer electronics company called ZAGG, Z-A-G-G, a nonprofit organization known as the Freedom Forum Institute, Myriad Genetics, so that's kind of terrifying, Performance Health, and more. Now, since they were all using this platform, this is similar to the Blackbaud breach in that this is a supply chain hit, they all had the same type of data exposed. What was exposed, according to the research by VPN Mentor, is analytics reports, internal presentations, including company strategy reports or presentations, annual revenue amount presentations, and current customer count presentations. Training material was exposed. Internal client requests were also exposed, including things like the requester name and the project name and details. Marketing strategies and collateral were exposed. Product labels, business intelligence, mailing lists with relevant personally identifiable information, and university donor lists, including things like full names, personal and work emails, direct phone numbers, credentials such as degree, school, and year, and amount donated to the university. Obviously, that's a massive problem, and hopefully InMotion now has it under wraps. But if your organization uses them, heads up to you. You might want to check. Moving on, we're going to be talking about two different orthopedic outfits in Atlanta that got hit, basically right in the same vein, Piedmont Orthopedics and Ortho Atlanta. Now, the threat actors called Pisa or M. Espinoza, no relation to me, I hope, whatsoever, have already dumped more than 3.5 gig of data from these two. Much of the information is things about like rentals and business aspects, but as they were researching, or the researchers were looking through the files, a number of highly detailed medical records on patients that included things like name, dates of birth, address, contact information, diagnosis, surgical details, laboratory tests, cardiograms, and insurance information looks like they were exposed, not to mention pages and pages of other types of PHI or protected health information. The files may have been exfiltrated on July 11th, looking at the timestamps in the dumped archive on the dark web. So heads up to you if you're in Atlanta and use Piedmont Orthopedics or Ortho Atlanta. Moving on. Let's talk about Michigan State University. They disclosed on August 10th that attackers were able to steal credit card and personal information from roughly 2,600 users of its shop.msu.edu online store. And this looks like it's coming from MageCart. Basically, that's the gang that typically goes in and breaks the payment options on websites and then starts skimming credit cards off of it. And this is not the first time I've had to declare a university has had to declare a data breach, and I've had to report on it here in the last month. We've had others around the United States that have been in the exact same boat. So heads up if you've shopped at the Michigan State University online store before August 10th. Moving on. Let's talk about the SANS Institute. That's S-A-N-S. They are a major player in cybersecurity training. Basically, if you're in my field, you know who they are. They suffered a data breach. 28,000 user records containing personally identifiable information was apparently exposed. Now, on August 6th, during a review of email configuration and rules, the staff at the SANS Institute discovered a security breach. This is from their official notification. 28,000 records of personally identifiable information have been forwarded to an unknown email address. Now, apparently what happened was that their staff had discovered basically a forwarding rule in one of their email accounts, which was set to forward emails to an unknown address. Basically, the way this would work is that if I sent you an email and you were compromised, you would get my email, but a copy of it would be immediately forwarded to God knows where and to God knows who, and that seems to be the place. The rule was active apparently for only a single account, but that's enough for me to sit here and talk about the SANS Institute. So hopefully that will be cleaned up and affected parties will be notified. Moving on, let's talk about the Flintshire Council out of the UK. They got their website hacked and personal information of people who left comments about local planning issues on their website was hit. Now, a summary of people's comments had been made viewable on the website, but their personal details were apparently redacted. However, and I quote the council, a conscious effort has been made to remove that protection by somebody accessing our website. So basically, somebody was trying to remove the redactions and see who was basically complaining or discussing planning issues within Flintshire. Now, those affected have been contacted, according to the council, and it said the documents were removed from public view after the breach was spotted within 3 hours of being published. So hopefully they were on it that quickly and nobody was really exposed beyond, let's say, a handful of people. Stinks for them, but hopefully everybody else in Flintshire should be okay. Moving on, let's talk about a company called R1RCM. They're actually one of the nation's largest medical debt collection companies. They're formerly known as Accretive Health Incorporated, and they're based out of Chicago, so they're around me. This was a ransomware attack, and R1RCM acknowledged taking down its systems in response to this attack, but otherwise declined to comment for Brian Krebs of Krebs on Security, who broke this story. Now, the company has access to a ton of personal and financial medical information because obviously they're debt collectors on this. Tens of millions of patients, including names, dates of birth, social security numbers, billing information, and medical diagnostic data. And so since they're currently declining to talk about what ransomware they got or how they got in, we're going to see how bad this is, but if they are one of the largest medical debt collection companies, that's a problem, especially during the pandemic when I think a lot of people are going into debt here in the United States to get tested and all of that. Please feel free to make fun of us, Canada, UK, and others. That is a crazy, crazy thing. Moving on, let's talk about Brown-Forman. And once again, I am not a fan of these kinds of hits because this is one of the largest companies in the United States that is in basically the alcohol business. And I talked about one of those last week too. They got hit with a cyber attack. The intruders allegedly copied 1 terabyte of confidential data out, and they plan on selling that to the highest bidder, essentially this information, and then anything that isn't purchased, they're going to leak. Now, the ransomware operator known as Revil is the one taking credit for this, and in a post on their website, Revil posted multiple screenshots with directory trees, file names that appear to support their claims, and internal conversations between some Brown-Forman employees. The pics show documents dating back as far as 2009. So this is at least 11 years of massive data trove from Brown-Forman, and hopefully they're going to weather that storm because, as I mentioned last week, if you cut off the alcohol supply in the middle of a lockdown and a pandemic, there is no rock you can hide under that people won't find you and basically put you on trial and murder you for. So heads up to attackers out there. If you're thinking about hitting alcohol companies, you shouldn't. Moving on, let's talk about Samsung phones, specifically the Find My mobile app as developed by Samsung. This is actually coming out of the DEF CON conference that was, I think, like a week or two ago, which I signed up virtually and attended some and all that, and I can't even remember at this point. It's living in lockdown. But a new security vulnerability in the Samsung phone's Find My mobile app would allow attacker to actually perform remote attacks. The security vulnerability is actually rather severe as it enables threat actors to remotely track victims in real time, like their place or location, monitor phone calls and messages, but they also can possibly get the authorization to delete data that is stored on the phone through this, because usually a Find My mobile app, whether it's whoever's making it, has the ability to remote wipe the phone. So that's obviously a huge, huge problem that we are hoping Samsung will fix sooner than later if they haven't already. I didn't see that they had. And finally, and this is, I think, a very interesting thing that we need to talk about, because we need to talk about state-sponsored cyber attacks between countries, because this is actually a huge and growing problem. And I will get to that, but I have 2 different examples that are basically coming out of the last couple of weeks or so, and it has been just absolutely fascinating as I've compiled my notes. I wanted to do this for a Breaches of the Week, but quite frankly, I could probably do a deep dive on my radio show for this. First up is Ethiopia, who's being targeted by Egypt. Now, here's the issue that has been escalating for a while between these 2 companies, but we saw a ramp up of this in June of this year. The 2 countries have been at odds at each other over Ethiopia's construction of a massive hydroelectric dam, basically on the Nile, which is Egypt's sole source of water. So that's obviously a very serious issue, because they're using this for irrigation, for farming, and basically it's in general supplying 100 million people in Egypt. But this is basically the source of 85% of the Nile's water is basically coming out of Ethiopia, and they are saying that they're basically Chinese backed because the Chinese are funding this. This dam is crucial for basically having their own development goals and combating poverty within Ethiopia. This has been under construction since 2011. It is known as the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, or GERD GERD, and it continues to obviously be a source of growing tension as it nears completion between Ethiopia and Egypt. Now, this animosity has seen Ethiopia basically into the crosshairs of Egyptian state-sponsored hackers numerous times in recent years. Now, these hackers who claim to belong to the Cyber Horus group left messages on the homepage of things like the Ethiopian Regional Police Force Training Center and other websites, threatening war over the Nile and a pharaonic curse, basically the curse of the pharaoh, upon the Ethiopians. In a statement, Ethiopia's Information Network Security Agency claimed in late June that it was actually able to thwart a massive cyber attack by this group, or they're calling them cyber criminals, targeting Ethiopia's political and economic infrastructure. Most of the targeted websites were offline for an extended period of time, and so by virtue of this rising tension, Egypt then called the United Nations for intervention over all of this. Now, talks were held by video conference on Friday, June 26th, between the leaders of Ethiopia, Sudan, and Egypt, and it was mediated by South African President Cyril Ramaphosa, on behalf of the African Union. Now, according to reports, Ethiopia has now agreed with other nations to hold off from filling the dam for the time being. Now, I think this really just underscores how important cybersecurity is, and we're going to get to that, because the second one is basically Pakistan and India, because Pakistan is claiming that they are being targeted by state-sponsored Indian hackers. Now, according to Pakistani news outlets, Pakistani intelligence agencies have been tracking a major security breach by Indian state-sponsored hackers, whereby phones and other gadgets of government officials and military personnel were targeted. And again, this is according to their media. According to a statement by the Inter-Services Public Relations, or ISPR, of Pakistan, the cyber attack by Indian intelligence agencies involved in, I quote, a range of cyber crimes, including deceitful fabrication by hacking personal mobiles and technical gadgets. Various targets of hostile intelligence agencies are being investigated. Pakistan Army has further enhanced necessary measures to thwart such activities, including action against violators of standing operating procedures on cybersecurity. It is also said that basically an advisory is being sent to all government departments so that they can identify security gaps and lapses and obviously try to counteract those or fill those holes. Pakistan has also advised its senior officials to stop using WhatsApp. Conversely, India has also come out claiming that Pakistani state-sponsored hackers have been hitting infrastructure within the Indian government as well. So quite frankly, it goes both ways. I have not seen any word on Egypt claiming the same from Ethiopia here. And like I said, I think this underscores just how important cybersecurity is. If we have situations like this happening before the era of the internet, odds are these countries may be engaging in skirmishes. Obviously, Pakistan and India have a very long and tumultuous relationship with this, with nuclear testing and everything else. But in the terms of Ethiopia and Egypt, we probably would see people shooting at each other on those borders as opposed to hacking into things. But the problem that we have with basically hacking in or breaking into things is that we can possibly affect a much wider swath of the area, meaning of the population, because we can shut down critical services to those who need them. We had a thing here called Bridgegate in the state of New Jersey in the United States, where apparently a bridge was closed, and it seemed to be out of political spite and all of that. And I'm not going to get into that, but by virtue of that, an ambulance with a critically hurt person in whatever way was not able to make it to the hospital, and that person died. That's the kind of thing we're talking about if we're able to, let's say, hack into the bridge controls and not allow them to close, which means medical personnel may not be able to get somewhere they need to go. I mean, this is a huge, huge problem we have worldwide. And I will say this as well. My goal here is not to adjudicate these conflicts or these disputes. I am not qualified to do that, although I read very heavily on foreign policy. I'm sure Egypt and India, for example, who are the alleged aggressors in the two stories that I just put to you have their versions of these events, and I have followers from all 4 of these countries, and I welcome everybody here, so I don't want any feed of mine to devolve into basically a rehashing of this. I'm using these as an example to say that we need to show that state-sponsored hacking and attacks do occur, and we also need to understand that countries need to have a good cybersecurity plan in place to basically combat this. The UN a couple of years ago did a survey that showed while all recognized nations around the world are aware of cyber threats to their governmental infrastructure, only 50% actually had a plan. And that doesn't mean all 50% actually had that plan executed as well. That is unacceptable. And so when we are looking at this, and let's say Egypt has a more developed plan than Ethiopia or vice versa, then we have asymmetrical warfare online here where one country may possibly be able to knock out the other. And if we are looking at this, I think it behooves everybody to have good cybersecurity in their life. So that is your breaches of the week. It is absolutely insane. Please, I do not want to start an international incident in my comment section on this, but it really underscores the issues here. And so were you affected? Let me know. And please like, share, follow me here on Facebook and Twitter at NickAESP. And please feel free to subscribe to me at YouTube as well. And as always, stay safe and stay online. Thanks, everyone.